Italy then, when the pandemic was really coming into full force at the beginning of 2020, you decided to start running a marathon each day. And originally, I think you said you were planning for like 15, just going for 15 marathons, kind of at that time when the end of the lockdown was expected to end, but then it got extended and you kept running the marathon. So what was the reason behind, or how quickly did you go from this idea of I'm going to do a marathon a day to like just starting the first marathon and going with it and seeing where it went?
From the inception of the thought of I should start running marathons to when I started was probably about 12 hours.
Man, just like you moved to Hawaii, just like, man, okay. I can appreciate that. I like it.
Yeah. I'm one that I can procrastinate a lot of things in my life, but when, I don't know, I'm just like, yep, that sounds good. And then sometimes great. Actually, most of the time it's been great. Yeah. So I essentially came up with the idea because I was trying to figure out like everything's getting canceled. I had all these races planned. And I was like, how do I use this fitness? I don't want to just let it go to waste. And we couldn't even go outside. So I was just like, what can I do? But I also, after a big race, or I was going to do some, 24-hour, 48-hour on a treadmill or whatever. But I was like, I don't want to have the come down from that, because when you can't really train, but you're still tired and you have to recover. I didn't want to deal with that and not be able to go outside or
recovering in isolation doesn't sound super fun.
No. So that's why I thought of, let's think about something continuous. Mm-hmm. So I essentially mentioned to my husband, because my job, I was working at for the fitness division of the Navy, so we had nothing to do. I was like, yeah, what do you think about this? And he
goes, everyone in the Navy is already fit, so
yeah. Well, like to think that they try their best. There's definitely some work to be done. But anyway, the gyms were closed and everything. So I was like, hey, what do you think about this? He's like, yeah, sure. Just don't take it too fast. Be chill about it. And I emailed my coach and said, what do you think about this idea? And he said, why don't you wait a few days and think about it to make sure you really want to do that. And I sheepishly emailed him that following afternoon and said, I may have already started. So yeah, from there, I didn't have any intention of it being a big deal or anything that would reach this level, or it just kind of kept escalating. And around 30, I had a friend say, maybe you should look into this more and see what the record is. And at that point I was like, I'm halfway. That sounds doable. So it just kept going. And then, it really became a staple in my life in so many ways of all of us were facing such unknown. And when you have this constant and something that tires you out, that fulfills your day, it's hard to let go of. And it seems so silly of who wants to run a marathon every day. It's like, well, honestly, you get used to it. And it was cool. It opened up. It's amazing how even being on a treadmill, which seems so repetitive, it opened up so many opportunities. And it felt like I was even though it doesn't really matter at all that I was running a treadmill. No, I wasn't curing cancer or curing COVID or anything like that, but it felt like I was doing something of, I don't know, relevance, or just accomplishing a goal. So
yeah. So just for our listeners trying to do the math at home, that is 180 miles a week for 3 months straight. So just so they can all get their heads around that, all of our listeners doing 50 miles a week or whatever they're doing, 180 miles a week for 3 months straight. So that's and also, okay, as part of that, you made a move from Italy back to the US during that time, and also did some of your marathons in different places within the US during that time. So that added complexity of it, going out and getting your 4+ hours a day of running in, you're also doing all this other stuff too. So maybe talk a little bit about that. Like what marathon were you on when you had to make the move back from Italy to the US, and how did that all play out? Thanks to XOSKIN for sponsoring this podcast episode. And it's extremely fitting. Well, part of the reason that we got introduced to Alyssa was thanks to XOSKIN, because she swears by XOSKIN for her long running endeavors to stay blister-free, chafe-free. And now XOSKIN is having a holiday sale through the end of December. Everything is already discounted on their site. You just got to give these a try. So it's XO, literally the letter X, the letter O, skin.us is the website. Head over to exoskin.us. Everything's already discounted on sale. When you check out, enter in the comment beer mile, and enter in the comment your sock size, and they will send you a free pair of socks with your order.
Hell yeah.
So you're already getting a discount on anything that you buy there, and then you're getting the free pair of socks to try out. Just note the toe socks, or the socks in general, they're a little bit different sizing. They're size 1, 2, and 3. And I'm size 10 shoe. I'm a size 2 sock. So just make sure you check the size guide before you get on there. But literally make a comment, beer mile, then size whatever, size 2, size 1, and they will send you a free pair of socks with your order. exoskin.us, thanks for the support.
So the one that I did, so we flew, there were no commercial flights at the time. So we flew on a carrier through the Air Force, and we had to stop at a German Air Force base on the way to Virginia. And record was 60. I ran number 59 at the German Air Force Base. So it was, oh my gosh, I was so stressed about because you never know with flights. We'd had our flight pushed back multiple days. And I was just like, just please don't go wrong. Just please don't go wrong. Like, we just have to get through this.
It would have been different if it was like for the first 10.
Yeah.
59.
Because you can always restart. But like when you're like you're at breaking the record. You've already done the work. Like, you're there. Yeah. Getting it derailed for something out of your control would be devastating.
Exactly. I mean, luckily I actually ended up having like the CEO of the Navy, which is one of the highest ranking naval officers, congratulate me on it. So I feel like at that point, the Navy was pretty behind, like, making sure that I was going to do it. But you just never know. So yeah, we flew into Germany, didn't get there till like 9:00 at night. And so, or 9:30. And by the time we got everything done, it was like 10:30. And I was so sure that I was going to have like some issue that was going to take me 6 hours or something crazy. So at 1:00, I woke, or like a little before 1, I woke up, I was just like, I'm going, I don't care. And the whole time I was I ended up talking to my parents for a lot of it, because it was back in the States, so they were awake. And I started being like, I don't know if I'm going to laugh or cry or what's happening. And then I had someone, actually, this random dude, meet me at 4 a.m. to finish it off with me, which was awesome.
Wow. So were you running just like around the base or doing?
I couldn't go off base because of COVID. Yeah. So I was just, luckily it was a big base, but I remember at one point I kind of ended up on the tarmac and was like, okay, I should probably get off. Like, I don't feel like I should be here. So
that's crazy. So then moving to the US rather, and ultimately settling in Florida. So after you've hit 60, you've got the record, like, what's the motivation to keep going at that point? Were you just feeling good and it was just part of your routine, so you're just basically going for as long as you possibly can at that point? Or did you still did you change in your head and say, now my new number is like 100 or something else?
Yeah. So, I felt good. Like, it was part of my routine. I wasn't having any issues. So at first I had said 65, and then I was like, I don't feel done with this. And so then I switched to 75. And then I promised my husband he could get a tattoo if I could go to 100, because he definitely had to pick up the slack, because like runner's brain, I definitely had runner's brain. I just was spacey and I wasn't super productive. outside of running, and just was kind of like, I didn't have energy for most of life's just normal things. I mean, I could get it done, but it just wasn't I was kind of forgetful. And so he picked up the slack definitely on that. But I kept being like, I'm not quite satisfied. And so my firm stop though was 100 because I had a race that I wanted to do in October.
Okay.
And then we ended up getting COVID. So he brought it. He was at a training school and someone else had it there and it just spread. And so when I kind of realized that that's what we had, I had said from the start, it's not worth health risks or, long-term damage. So I stopped. 96, I felt horrible. My chest hurt and I was like, yeah, I'm done. So 95 it was. And I had people be like, why'd you stop at 95? I mean, random internet trolls.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, I totally wanted to. It's like 95. That was totally when I wanted to stop.
That was the goal from the beginning, 95.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you feel like there's any unfinished business, or was like getting COVID just kind of the only way that it would have wrapped up with you being
it was perfect. I mean, I'm actually writing a book about it. Like what better ending? Right. I think that the best thing about it was that I never expected any of it. And so every marathon I was really grateful for. And so I think oftentimes it's so much better when you don't have expectations on yourself. Yeah. And I had no expectations for it. I would have been kind of bummed if I'd gotten to 55 or 59, but every day was super cool and every day was a journey. And so that's why the whole thing is just kind of like such a cool gift that I was given and that I got to be a part of.
If you had started it like at the very beginning saying I'm going to get to 100, it would have seemed like super daunting probably and made it less enjoyable because after you're done with 10, you're like, oh my gosh, here we go. Like I still got 90 of these things. But it's like anything, like breaking it into those smaller pieces is like more attainable. And you're just like, all right, I'm just going to do my best for today. And then I'll see what tomorrow brings. And that's really like the best way to attack it. I guess, is that a mindset that you also take into some of these longer races as well, where you like kind of break out the race into certain pieces and focus on one thing at a time? Or how do you approach a 100-mile race or 200-plus-mile race?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what it comes down to is that I actually really struggle at the beginning of things because I get overwhelmed by how far it is or how hard it's going to be. And so I'm so much better in the second half of things because I've just settled into like, I'm fine. But I've gotten better, but I had several races kind of when I first started out and was getting more competitive where I would be crying at like mile 10 because I would just be super overwhelmed and it takes me a long time to warm up. And so I would just be like, how am I going to keep going? This is so far. But I've learned to break things down. In the marathons, I had like very specific of like 6 miles is like awesome, which is close to 10, which is close to half. And then we get to half, you're halfway there, which is close to 15. Like just how these ways of mentally, I call it like mental cheerleading. Where I would like celebrate each milestone instead of it really shifted my mindset of instead of being like, I have 10 miles left. How am I ever going to do it? Be like, wow, you made it to 16 miles. That's awesome. Like have a snack, good job. Yeah. And so with ultras, we have aid stations. And so it's almost like a built-in, do this 6 mile section and then you're at the next aid station and then you just go aid station to aid station rather than thinking about the whole thing. Cause it is super overwhelming. I mean, geez, like 30 miles is overwhelming. A marathon's overwhelming. Right. So just breaking it down mentally is so much better.
That's like your least favorite person on a long run who's like, oh, all right, guys, we went through mile 1, only 14 more to go.
We're 5% done.
Right.
I once ran 100K and it was a fantastic race, but they had kilometer markers. And I was like, no.
What?
Nope. Oh, man. Wait. And they'd be like, woohoo, you're at kilometer number 62. And you're just like, no.
Oh man. Yeah. That's one of my pet peeves in racing marathons even is like they have every kilometer to like your big road marathons. They typically have every kilometer and every mile marked. And then everyone, like if you're running in a pack, everyone's GPS watch is like beeping every mile. And it's like, just stop. Like, I don't want to be looking at my watch every couple of minutes to see if I'm quote unquote on pace. Like, it's like, like marathon and up, it's so much running like on feel and like listening to your body and not just like, I don't know, using just the pace on your watch as like the measure of how things are going is not really smart in my opinion. Doesn't work for me. Doesn't work for a lot of people I know. So yeah, that's always one of my pet peeves is when it's like something that's like over marked like that. And it's just, it makes it that much more painful to get through.
You sound like you should sign up for an ultra.
I know. So I did do Pikes Peak Marathon in August. And so I would consider that an ultra. It like took me an hour and a half longer than a road marathon. So I'll say that I'm making my way there. I still need to sign up for something that's truly an ultra, but I'm working on it.
Oh, that's awesome. Because I mean, I think the most awesome part of it is that you could have a 50K where people are, breaking like 3.5 hours. Or you could have a 50K that has, 10,000 feet of climbing and it takes like a fast time is 8 or 9 hours. And so it's just that variability is really cool. I mean, it's funny because in some ways people will be like, oh, what's your best time? Or like, I bet you're really fast in a mile. It's like, not exactly. Or like, well, this one time I did 100 miles in 35 hours and that was super fast actually. So yeah. It's just totally dependent on terrain and that's what makes it super fun. Exactly. Yeah. It's more about the and that's another, like, if I had to rant about another thing that track and road runners do, it's all like, well, what was your time? What was your time? Yeah. And it's like, it's and sometimes I guess, it makes sense to do that because that's the only like kind of apples to apples comparison that you have against other people. But it's like every like day's conditions are different, like the race played out in a different way. And like, saying that, oh, that race, like he wasn't any good or she wasn't any good because they ran 10 seconds slower than this other person did at this other race. It's like, well, what were the conditions like? How did the race play out? Like all these things that go into it. So I am all in favor of more just the like competing against the people on the day and just trying to like have that be the focus versus just worrying about specifically a time on the paper. Absolutely. I was actually terrified to do my first marathon because I was like, oh, people can judge me now.
Yeah, like it's somewhat standardized.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. And especially too, people outside of the running world, it's like for some reason, everyone knows marathon times. And so, I was pretty nervous of like, oh man, what if I'm really bad at this? This is and I'm not super fast. I can Boston qualify, but like, I was just so worried of like, oh no, now I can tell people my marathon time versus this obscure, like, what's your, 100K time? No one knows what that is. Right. So. And like, I know Jim Walmsley, like running the US Olympic trials for the marathon, like got some flack from people because they're like, oh, see, he's not as good as the road marathon. It's like, if honestly, if he had made the top 10 or whatever at the trials. And that would have been like crazy. I wasn't expecting him to because it is such a different skill set.
It's a very specialized.
It's very specialized. But like all the people now that are haters on like, oh, well, if the good marathon people just did the trails, they would crush everyone in the trails. It's like, no, that's not really how it works at all because it's completely different biomechanics and everything else. So oh man. I was getting heated on this. But I was really hoping that Jim would make the Olympic team because then it would be like, look at this. Like this guy is literally the GOAT, like on and off the roads and the trails. But I don't know. Side rant.
I love it.
I'm curious, as somebody who spends a lot of time on her feet, both in training and in these really long races, what's your fueling strategy?
That's kind of the fun part of ultras is that I've eaten like pizza on the go, mac and cheese. Like during the Pinhoti Trail, which is 350 miles, at one point I sat down and realized like 5 minutes later I'd eaten a pound of hash browns. I had someone come bring me hash browns and cheese on it from Waffle House. And
nice.
I like handed the container back and they were just like, you just ate about a pound of potatoes in about 5 minutes. I was like, cool. And then just ran off. My stomach didn't bother me at all.